We are rattling through them. Next up, we have Harrison Thane, who... excellent, you're there. I was only slightly concerned that you might not be there. Are you guys presenting together? Yeah. Cool, excellent, okay. And it's Tom, right? Is it Tom? Yeah. Yeah, okay. So Harrison and Tom, who make a fantastic project called Zinester, which is based over in Kenya. And we've already had the slums mentioned once. I think two slums is too many, guys. I think we're going to have to scrap this. A fantastic project working with kids in the slums in Kibera. And the thing that I really loved about this one is that, like, when you're doing something like this, a project that's kind of like empowering people and giving voice, it's very easy to overpower or to end up kind of a bit sappy, and actually you've got so much like energy and fun and passion on the page. So I'm really looking forward to hearing about the process of how you did that.
Great, thanks. So Tom and I have come a long way today, all the way from.
Round of applause for guys.
Well done. So we've come all the way from Nairobi today. Tom and I have been doing a project, starting a pilot workshop in Kibera slums in Nairobi to give photojournalism skills to the marginalized, give them a voice. So first off, I think we're just going to play a little video we made. Here it goes.
My name is Lucky, and I live in Kibera in Nairobi. It is the second biggest slum in Africa. There are 1 million people here. I'm lucky because I go to school at Wings of Life Children's Center.
I set up Wings of Life Children's Center during troubles in 2007. We started with 5, now we have 295 children. I was very happy to welcome Zinester to Wings of Life Children's Center.
When they came, they told us that they are going to teach us how to make a zine. A zine is a magazine that you make yourself so that our voices can be heard. The first workshop we did with the Zinesters, they told us about the 3 most important things to tell a good story. They are: a good story is often a true story about our life. It must have a hero we can relate to. Sometimes she must fight a monster. The second important thing is about layout and making it fit on the page. We do not have money, so it is important to make our materials go far. The third thing they have taught us is how to take photographs. They said that one good photograph is worth 1,000 words. We are teaching the others how to make their own too. It is useful because it has taught me how to be creative and business-minded. If we can make another zine, we will be very, very happy.
So, yeah. That was Lucky, one of our stars of the zine project. So,
So yeah, I think it's fair to say that self-publishing's been around for a long time, and there's just a smattering of images that I chose. I studied history, so there's a form from the Diggers there, an anarchist parenting guide, something probably about witchcraft, and it's nothing new. But I think that when Harry mentioned zines in the context of Africa, it appealed to me.
So the media, the self-publishing kind of journalism, and the medium we used was zines, especially like the DIY style zine, because the equipment you need is just there. The kids have pencils, glue, paper, and it allows them to keep making them as well. I make zines is like a different way for me to produce my work. Instead of just putting it on blogs, I kind of make photocopies of my photography and designers. And hands up here, who's a graphic or visual artist here? Not many. Okay, keep your hands up if you're dyslexic.
I think that there are some fibbers here.
Yeah, a lot of people. Anyway, so that brings me back to when I was a kid, growing up in Byron Bay as a dyslexic 12-year-old. My mother was working as a graphic designer for the local newspaper in Byron Bay. That's the local newspaper there. She was worried about how I was doing in school and encouraged me to take more photos and to do more and try to get some work in the actual paper. Go after stories and do whatever you can. And which reminds me of when I was on the bus home one time, and my best friend Griffin at the time told me about this. Told me that he let me in on a little secret. And behind his mum owned a shop that sold baby clothes. And behind the shop was a shrubbery, like a little grassy bush. And in the grassy bush, he took me there one day. He took me to the bush, and inside the grassy bush was about 100 or 200 feral hamsters, these guinea pigs. And I was like, whoa, this is such a great idea. So, like, we have to jump on this opportunity, like hundreds of them, but they were quite deranged. So we ended up making this little makeshift trap, like a box and a stick on the box with a string going all the way back. And around the corner from the bush was a pet store. We bought some hamster food. And we put the hamster food in the box. And maybe about 20, 30 of these feral hamsters came. We caught them one after the other. We got about 20 in a box. And we took it to the pet store. And really happy with our collection of feral hamsters. So we put the box on the table, and the pet store owner put his hand in and brought out one hamster, and they were looking at each other in the eye, and there was no way, he said, he could sell these in the store. They're just too deranged. So that was a bit disappointing because we put in so much work. So we started to photograph each one, and knowing my mom was at the newspaper, I thought maybe we could get some nice shots of the hamsters in the newspaper. And maybe sell them. So I asked Mom, do you like any of these photos? Do you think they could go in the paper? And she's like, no way. The editor would never allow you to sell these hamsters in the newspaper. So disappointed again. We decided to put them just into a little book, a hamster book, hamster zine. And it looked really great. We named each one, and we handed them around to our friends, and little did I know, I had just made my first self-published magazine. I couldn't find the original, but this is what it would have looked like, I think. Yeah. So fast forward to 2013. I'm working for the Nike Foundation's Girl Effect in Rwanda, a magazine set up for young girls, made by young girls, and distributed to young girls around Rwanda. I was working as a photographer there, doing workshops with the girls because it just started. So we were just, investigating like photography and different stories and how to gather content. And that's where I met Tom. He was working as insights.
I was working as an insights manager, which basically meant going up to the remote hill communities and interviewing girls about their lives and the issues that face them, and finding stories to support the kind of, I guess, the ethos of the girl effect, which was to champion positive deviance. So those words combined were new to me, but it basically meant that if a girl was doing something that challenged the social norms, perhaps she might be working as a mechanic, or she had aspirations to become an airline pilot, then that would be something that would be put in the magazine. I think it's fair to say that, you know, the magazine was extraordinarily well put together, but the girls there was no what you would call a competitive voice, I suppose, in Rwanda. And yeah.
Yeah, so the magazine was distributed around to 80,000 girls. The content would come in, and it'd be such great content, you know, stories about girls from all around Rwanda. And they'd get all the content, and then Nike would send it off to a design studio in London to make this perfect A3 color magazine, which looked amazing, but in Rwanda there was no equivalent or competitor. So yeah, we thought maybe take the editor out of that and see what happened. I was living in Shanghai, and I was just working in doing fashion production video shoots, and I wanted to get back to Africa. And this is Tom and I.
That's basically, he called me from Shanghai. I was back in London. I'm a writer, and I was doing some development work, and he said, well, do you want to go back? And we had long discussed doing some DIY workshops there and just seeing what could be done by those girls without that kind of apparatus that had existed on Niniminga. And so I had visited Kenya and Nairobi on my way back. I had some friends who had grown up in Kibera, the slum, and I called them and said, you know, is there a school or a place where we could go and try the workshop? Very quickly I was introduced to Pastor Jane, who's the lady that you saw in the film, and she said, well, you know, now that we've met, you have to do it here, because if you don't, you can try and run, but God will find you. And even if you crawl under the bed, he'll grab you by the ankle and shake you until you say. I said, Jane, you know, that's it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sold. So we're going to do it at Wings of Life.
This was our first headquarters. Tom had found this kind of old camping site and this van that had no wheels, and we called it our Zinester Hates Q.
We're quite a limited budget at this stage.
Yeah,
but
so fully self-funding this. Yeah. So
what we started to do at that point was basically to sort of think back about the things that have worked on Niniminga, but sort of retrofit it to an environment where we knew from meeting Pastor Jane in the school that there was no real media training or creative training. So it was really kind of, you know, chalk and talk, I think they call it. The teachers would get up and they would basically, you know, talk, and the children would listen and write down, and you know, they would put up their hand but only if asked, and you know, that. So what we wanted to do first of all was to get rid of that and take the kind of that teacher element out of it and have them drive the workshop. So I think the first thing that we did with them was to bring in loads of different magazines and to lay them all out and then give them scissors and get them to cut those magazines up and then stick them back together and label them, in a sense gaining ownership and confidence in relation to a media that was quite alien to them.
in this picture here, we were trying to open up to the kids, because it's like 99% of the time the teacher is talking, like 2 + 2 is 4, 2 + 2 is 4, without thinking critically at all about why is it 4? I don't know. It just is. So we decided to start to get to introduce ourselves. Some of the kids knew where Australia was, and we started to draw some kangaroos up on.
That's a kangaroo there with a baby kangaroo, and drawing that was Collins, who turned out to be the star illustrator in the entire school.
Yeah, Collins could do everything. He was super autistic, but he could take good photos, asking the right questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is how the workshops went down. We first would go in and we would give them a bunch of zines and ask the questions: what, why, how. What's the...
I mean, I think the thing that we were conscious of at the beginning was that, I mean, Nairobi and certainly in Kenya, wider Kenya, it's an oral storytelling tradition there. So when we asked the kids if they had stories, the stories that came back tended to be traditional stories. And then we said, well, we want things that are about Kibera and your lives. And then they started to kind of mash the truth with these traditional stories. And we got some quite interesting stories. One that I particularly liked was about a lawyer who had sort of done good and had a Mercedes and sometimes visited the slum. But because he had taken some shortcuts, he turned into a hyena. And from thinking first of all that this was going to be about citizen journalism and capturing the truth, we quickly realized that actually it would be much more fun and I think revealing if we were to make it a creative exercise. And that then rapidly informed what we went on to teach. I basically handled the story and the interviewing and the narrative side of things, and Harry basically taught them photography.
Yeah, so then on the about the third or the fourth workshop, we started to get them to start reporting. So every week we'd go in for a 5-hour lesson on a Saturday, and we'd give them some homework. So the first homework was go out and interview someone that you've never met before and find out something that nobody else knows about them. So they would go out and come back and with these crazy stories.
I think it was quite impressive, really, like how quickly they got over the hurdle of, okay, this is an alien form to us, the magazine, and then they just kind of got on with it. And I think that the kids that we were working with in Kibera, they're very used to improvising around problems and challenges. And what was for us that was an environment that was a little bit overwhelming. There's 1 million people living on top of one another. For them, it was their natural environment. They were very quickly able to identify people that they wanted to talk to and get stories from them. We'll talk a little bit about those encounters later.
And then we had the print. So everybody had to go out and print their zine. And part of the workshop and the lesson was to find the best printer you can find for the money you have and print the best zine, because I've always had such trouble finding a good printer and then getting it printed, then having the final print. So they would have to negotiate their printer and get a little run of zines. And so this is one of the first lessons. We just gave them a bunch of magazines and let them cut up and just go to town on kind of like DIY scrapbook.
This one basically a shot that they got of a baboon on the outskirts of Kibera, and it's called The Thief of Fruit. And he says, I'm not a thief, actually, this is my hobby, and I'd like someone to employ me. So the themes basically began to come through in these mashups quite quickly.
This is some more mashups. So this was them to get their head around how to their first lesson in layout design. I gave them a picture of Frank Zappa, and they called him the hairy man.
Hair turned out to be quite a big theme, and one of the other zines was about hairstyles. And it's extraordinary how much money women in Kibera spend on their hairstyles and how much time they spend in the salon. They were quite envious of Frank Zappa's hair, and they say, may you lend me some hair.
And so we got into it a bit more, and we divided them up into teams. This is one team here, and each group had a reporter, a photographer, a writer, and an illustrator. And then Beryl, the youngest, was the team leader.
She was like the fixer.
Yeah.
Someone needed to be sorted out, she would do it.
So this zine in particular is called Chocolate City, which is a name they give Kibera, and they wrote about what it's going to be about: orphans, addicts, the aged, handicapped, and etc. Oops, yeah, it's Chocolate City. So after we did the few lessons, they decided to go out and interview in interviewed their particular neighborhood called Selenga district. And we're like, who's in your neighborhood? Who would you like to interview? And they're like, there's a drunk just around the corner who's friendly, and I would like to go interview him. So they wrote down their questions, and they went and interviewed him, and then they laid it out in a more readable way.
It's quite sort of interesting because once they had interviewed one person, they began to construct the narrative. It's true to say that at the beginning, when we asked them for the story and to lay out what their entire story would be about, it was kind of generic and it lacked form. And then once they started going down the alleyways, quite literally, we would be following them and they would be photographing the interviews. They began to follow the story. So they went to the carpenter here, who basically explained how he had started drinking this local liquor called Canggu. And then he said, well, I get it at this place. And then naturally, it was that was the next stop. We went to the lady that makes Canggu and sells it in order to pay the school fees for her children. And they're very entrepreneurial. So immediately they were finding out, well, how much do you pay for a glass of Canggu? And how much do you make it for? And how do you make it? And so the value chain began to become clear just through these two encounters.
This is Charlene interviewing the handicapped man. It's great. They ask him the crucial questions, what's your name, and then the challenges he faces and the secret. And then they usually write a little bio about just his whole circumstance. So they're really unjudgmental. And
I think, yeah, it's like we were encouraging them to ask questions and kind of critically assess what they were learning. But it was revelatory, really, to discover how this man supported himself, and it was interesting for them to go on that journey with him.
And then down the chain again, so who does he see? It's a doctor. We need to interview the doctor.
So actually, Dr. Leah is a pharmacist.
Yeah.
That she was the person that they were calling doctor. Well, in fact, there are very few doctors in Kibera, so if there was a problem, they would go to Dr. Leah, and she would have the information. If she didn't have it, she would know somebody locally that she could talk to about it. But in that way, they were able to find out about typhoid, the spread of malaria, and many other diseases that affect them within the slum environment.
Mm-hmm. So this is an orphan boy here. A lot of the girls and boys from the school were orphans, but a lot luckier than this one particular orphan. He didn't have any parents looking after him. But this is him making a football, I think.
I mean, the thing is like the stories that they were telling us were quite shocking and visceral, but they existed alongside this boy and were friends with him, and they were probably going to play football with him when he'd finished making his football. There's quite a lot of trouble with glue sniffing in the slum, but the stories that were shocking to us were just everyday to them. And they handled it in quite a light-hearted manner. Mm-hmm. So this boy's sniffing glue, and he's giving some to his dog.
The street boy was giving his dog glue to sniff.
Yeah.
I thought that was a pretty good way of explaining that. So afterwards, we finished the workshop, 6-week workshop, and they produced the magazine Chocolate City. And then we were starting to try and make connections with local news outlets, like FM radio. So we'd get invited to go along to radio interviews, and it was quite exciting for the girls to get out of the slum and feel as actual journalists that they'd made something. And we also got invited to Miss Plus Size Kenya, which is one of the most important events of the year in Kenya. And we got Lucky, who you saw in the video before, was invited along with Charlene and a reporter to be part of the press corps at Miss Plus Size Kenya. So it was really cute because we got like VIP access, and they were interviewing like MPs and lots of important people. And Lucky by that time had become so confident with the camera that she started to say, "Work it, work it every time she took the picture. So Lucky, as a photographer in the press corps, was getting the best photos out of anyone, any of the other press. So yeah, that was quite nice for them.
So yeah, we basically did a small Kickstarter round, and we did it really to test whether or not there was a demand for the zines that we had made with them, and there is, and we sold about 300. That was able to kind of finance the project and then provide the school with the equipment and a printer and access to electricity. So we're hoping to go back, and we're talking to a corporate sponsor within Kenya now about running a Pan-African zine self-publishing competition later this year. We're back now in the UK to talk to some NGOs in London, the Nike Foundation as well, and we're hoping really to kind of kickstart a self-publishing scene to rival those in the West. So anyone's interested, then we've got some magazines out in room 4 at the moment. We'd love to have a chat with you.
Yeah, and thank you.
Thank you very much. Oh, we want us on the seat.
You need to stay there. You need to stay there. That was brilliant. Thank you very much. I'm going to come and stand over here so you're not looking back at me. So I know that Pastor Jane wasn't like a client, but you had to go in and like get authority from her to do stuff. And I know that anytime you sort of like go in and say, hey, we're going to do this thing, it's going to be great, and they get excited and stuff. How did she feel about what came out? Was she like surprised? Was she 100% on board?
Well, I think she was very keen to get the word out there about the school. And she was also being ordained at that time in her church. So we actually covered that as a story as well. So for her, she got the concept of publicity as a magazine, that could offer her. So that was good. But she was absolutely fantastic. And she said very early on, I am your mum. and if anyone messes with you, just say you're with Pastor Jane.
Yeah.
So it was.
So she knew all about the drunks already. She knew that was all there.
Everyone would wave to her along on the street. By the time we left Kenya, I think we were down in Kibera 20 times, 30 times. Yeah. So it was like everyone's like Muzungo, Muzungo. Nice to see you.
Well, I'm really looking forward to seeing where the project goes, and really good luck with it. We now have a half-hour break, so we're going to be back in here for 4:30. We've managed to do 3 continents in 3 presentations. We've got another one coming up. So thanks to you guys again, and see you all after the break.
Thanks for having us.